Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cosmic Conversations. I'm your host, Sheila Seppi, and I want to welcome you to this episode on the Conscious Awakening Network. Please visit the Conscious Awakening Network at consciousawakeningnetwork.org. Sign up to be on our mailing list. And if you are watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. Now, I'm very excited for tonight. Our guest for this episode is Dean Graves, and he is a true luminary in the realm of spirituality, personal growth. And with over 2 decades of experience as a spiritual teacher, an author, and a podcaster, Dean has touched the lives of many individuals on their quest for inner peace and self awareness. His expertise in meditation and mindfulness instruction has guided countless souls towards a path of self healing and personal transformation. He is the author of 4 different books. The first one is, and I'm not sure if these are in order, but The Enlightenment, Plain and Simple, The Identity Model, Understanding and Healing Mankind's Stress and Suffering, Edifying Children of a Lesser God, Answers to Existential Questions, and The Enigma of Consciousness, a spiritual exploration of humanity's relationship to creation. And he is the host of 2 podcasts, Simple Enlightenment and Chatting with the Arcturians. And I want to talk with you a little bit more about Chatting with the Arcturians. So I want everyone just to kind of sit back and chill out as we get ready to delve into the wisdom and the insights of these experiences and this guide to help us along our journey to enlightenment. So, everyone, I want you to welcome with me. I just lost everything. Willow walked right across the screen. I want you all to welcome. Okay, little one, calm down here. Okay, Dean, I'm going to go ahead and bring you up. I found the screen again. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome.
Hi, Sheila. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm delighted you're still on the other end. I've got this little Havanese that thinks he's a cat, so he likes to walk across my desktop, and every now and then we have something a little strange happens, just
I'm
like
just reminding you who's actually in charge.
that's exactly right. But I am
Yeah.
so excited to have you here tonight. And I always like to start out and ask our guest if you can give us a little bit of information about who you are and kind of what brought you to this path and doing the things you're doing now.
Okay. Well, I'm in my 70s. I led a normally not unusual lifetime until around 50 years of age.
Mhm.
And around that time, I began meditating, and my spouse began meditating, and we she had some health problems, and so consequently, we were pursuing meditation as a mechanism in order to help deal with her health problems. And so, being the dutiful husband, I pushed her out in front of me and said, "Here, you try this, and if it doesn't kill you, then I'll try it." The usual
Yeah,
thing.
that kind of sounds familiar.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a joint effort, a joint endeavor, and in the course of beginning to meditate, we became very serious about it, began teaching it, and we ran across the raw material, if you're familiar with that,
Yes.
LNL research folks, and
Yes.
we became good friends with Carla. Don was already deceased at the time. So we pursued the raw material, which is a great introduction. It's intended to be a primer for additional learning. And my wife died in 2011, which was part of the plan. And so from that point on, she um, well, let me back up. Before she died, she began talking to her higher self. And I was not able to make that connection, and we couldn't figure out who my higher self was. And after she died, literally the day after she died, I heard this voice, and it was. And after I got over the surprise of that, and we've been communicating on a daily basis ever since. And she's been guiding me and teaching me, and um, then my current significant other was actually a student in my class, uh, or one of the classes that I taught. And we developed a relationship, and her home group is the Arcturian star system. And we began at their request, the Arcturians, they were waiting for us to get to this point, and began to communicate through her. I'm the questioner, or I'm the Dean Martin of the group, or actually probably the Jerry Lewis part of the group, but I'm supposed to be the straight guy to ask the questions and guide and interpret a lot of their information to make it more palatable to their density experience.
Yeah, it seems there's a lot of books, the Raw books, of course, the Seth
Mm-hmm.
books had, the questioner and someone who was actually bringing that information in. So that seems to be a pretty effective methodology in order to be able to bring forward this information.
Well, it is, and anyone that's communicating or learning through um, a positive spiritual source has to ask questions. They're not going to just walk in and say, "Here, this is what you need to know." When you ask the question, when you have enough wherewithal to ask the question, then that informs them that you're ready to receive the information. And so it is any teachings that they give us is on a question and answer basis. And if you
Mm,
want to go deeper, they'll go deeper, but you have to come up with the questions. You have to know what to ask in order to get the information.
right.
All of the positive sources are participants in creation, abide by what is called the law of free will, or the law of confusion. It's the same thing, just depending on who you're talking to. They make a different reference to you, and it's an agreement actually very similar to the prime directive in Star Trek. They won't interfere with anyone else's evolution.
Right.
And they won't give us any information about future. They won't make decisions for us. They won't do anything that interferes with our capacity to progress through the evolutionary process of our own volition.
Right.
And so that's why that is. The very things that you want to know, of course, what should I do and what the future is going to be, they won't tell us.
Right.
And so here we are, and that's why you ask questions.
Right. Right. So I do want to ask you another question. About the methodology or even about the show itself. Has any surprising information come through recently? I know in our casual conversations beforehand, you were mentioning that the Federation came through.
Mm-hmm.
Have they been presenting any types of consistent or strong messaging?
Yeah, most of our communications have been an expansion upon, for example, information that the raw material had provided us, and putting some things in a different context. For example, the raw material defines 8 densities. The Arcturians actually define 9 densities, but they include the creator as the object, who is the one infinite creator outside of creation, as a density, as a 9th density. So, that's a minor distinction, and the raw material just refers to the one infinite creator,
Mhm.
but that entity is outside of creation. And so it's just a different perspective and different terminology. But yes, the nature of the conversations for the last two discussions that we've had have changed to a much more serious note and providing us the tenor of the communication has been much less chatty. It's been more direct. And in summary, the information that they're giving us is that with the next 3 to 5 years, our humanity is going to experience a significant change, and probably some hardships. They won't tell us exactly what that is. I have some speculations as to what that is, but those are purely my speculations. And they're emphasizing that the window of the metaphor that they use is the window of opportunity is closing for the residual third density population to make a decision of whether they're going to polarize service to self or service to others, and that is no longer an option to vacillate between the two. That decision needs to be made with
Yes.
some earnest commitment. And so far, that is about it. That's about the intensity, and of course, their explanation is much longer than my brief summary. But that is the content that they're offering at this point. And
And
the reason that the Federation is participating is essentially as a guide and to emphasize the seriousness of the subject matter.
okay, that was my next question. Why did the Federation show up? So they're there
It's a group
to
effort,
validate and emphasize the importance of the
right?
information.
Yeah, they're adding the underline and the highlighting and the exclamation point.
Hmm. Well, the book you wrote, The Enlightenment, Plain and Simple, might be something that we all want to read because, as I understand, that helps people or it provides like practical steps for people to cultivate inner peace and awareness. Is that true? Is that
Yes,
right?
yes. Most people misunderstand what enlightenment is. Enlightenment, we perceive enlightenment to be a destination, primarily because of the accomplishments of the Buddha and the teachings of the Buddha. But enlightenment is not a destination. Enlightenment is synonymous with the evolution of consciousness. And so consequently, everyone is already enlightened to the extent they have allowed themselves to become enlightened. And so those still dwelling within the cycles of chaos haven't they haven't awakened. Awakening is misunderstood too. Awakening is nothing more than getting to that point in your life when you look around and you decide, all this stuff that I've been doing is not bringing me happiness. I'm not happier. And that is awakening. Said, I've got to do something else. And then from that point, you begin searching for other methodologies, other information, things that you need in order to heal, essentially, and evolve. And that requires a personal commitment, number one, even though you are going from the chaos of an erroneous life choice system into one that you don't know yet is going to be productive. But it requires taking that personal responsibility for undertaking that task. And in order to find success, it's contingent upon our development of awareness. We all have awareness. It is an inherent characteristic of the creator and is what we are tasked with in third density as becoming. And that awareness, while we are in that chaotic stage where we're trying to manipulate the world around us to give us happiness, our awareness is directed outside of us. And it is only when we come to that awareness, and meditation is the most effective tool that I know of, in order to invert that awareness and become aware of what it is about us and inside of us that we need to change, in order to make progress.
All right. So, in making this progress, a lot of times people think that in order to become enlightenment or to hold a certain level of, through the ascension process, that they have to spend massive times in meditation or mindfulness practices. So, what advice do you have to people who, might be struggling to establish some type of a consistent meditation practice? Do you find that that is an essential key to spiritual growth and development?
Um, I have in the back of the Identity Model book and also the Edifying Children of a Lesser God some specific exercises that have proven very effective for me, and I use them in my counseling practice, and they're extremely effective in aiding people to become more aware of awareness, learn to focus that awareness inside, and to begin some significant healing. Um, and I encourage people that say that they have difficulty meditating or that they have been meditating for years and don't feel like they've made any significant progress to self-employ these mechanisms. There's one that goes significantly deeper than the others, that you need someone to guide you, but they don't have to be a therapist. I have a script, in both books that you can follow with the script, and if you follow with the script in guiding someone, it will be effective. But you will reach a point where that um, surface or swimming awareness is not adequate, and meditation is the tool thereafter to take you deeper inside yourself in order to accomplish the goals that you want to work with. Most people, myself included, most people come to meditation because they're running away from the stick, because whatever they're doing hurts, and they want relief from that pain and suffering. And you meditate and you continue to run away from the stick while you're meditating until one day you get a bite of the apple. And once you get a bite of the apple, you realize, hey, that really tastes good, and I want more of that. So your motivation changes from running away from the stick to chasing the apple, to getting more of the apple. And so the meditation itself transforms usually at that point, if not before, and allows you to pursue a self-directed healing process. What you are doing, what we are tasked with in this range of consciousness is to first become aware, and as you continue to heal, to actually become awareness. And that is the foundational inherent characteristic of the creator. And that is essential in order to prepare us for graduation to fourth density, because it's hierarchical only because you have to build the foundation before you can put the walls of the house up. You have to put the walls up before you can put the roof up, and so forth. And so majority of the earthly population has not even begun that task yet, and has not even recognized the necessity of inverting that awareness to begin healing. But we will pursue that process. We can heal. We have enlightenment in this range of consciousness essentially involves two primary steps. One is inverting that awareness, which allows us to become aware of the emotional baggage that we have collected over a lifetime. Excuse me, emotional baggage is nothing more than all the experiences that we've had over the course of our lifetime that were messages to us about what we need to learn in order to fulfill the curriculum for this course of study that we call third density. But we didn't learn the lesson. So they're homework assignments, and we get to keep those homework assignments in the form of emotions. The emotions, relatively speaking, are nondescript. Most people associate emotions with stories or with events in their life. But if you, in the process of healing, if you understand, you remember the old days of the library where you had card catalogs, you'd go to the card catalog and you'd look up the book that you needed to get, and then you take the number from the book and go to number from the card catalog and go to the book. But the book is where you needed to go to in order to get the information that you needed.
Right.
Well, the story that most therapists work with and psychologists work with is the card catalog. And you can use that story to take you to the emotion, but you can go directly to the emotion and heal the emotion. So the first step in pursuing an enlightenment path is inverting that awareness and healing that emotional baggage simultaneously, but extending far beyond the healing of the emotional baggage is becoming aware of the beliefs that you've incorporated into your identity, which therein is the identity model.
Mm-hmm.
We are programmed from the minute that we're born to process thoughts. And every thought in and of itself is a complete experience. And we are obligated to assign an emotional value to that thought. Emotion is only our decision that this thought that I am currently processing either feels good and I like it, or it doesn't feel good and I don't like it. That's a complete emotion. All the things that we've labeled as emotions are actually conditions of being. But with this obligation of deciding what we like and what we don't like, and we're all motivated to get more of what we like, we begin to create a hierophant, a false identity, an ego. It's all the same thing, three different words for the same thing that we develop. And this identity, this hierophant, is who we think we are. And so, based upon our experiences in this lifetime, we incorporate these beliefs into our being and we create expectations. The expectations obviously are based upon our beliefs, but beliefs and the beliefs are based upon our experiences. But every time that we don't have our expectations met with the current experience, that is stress. Stress is our teacher. It's not our enemy. And so we're given the opportunity, that's the homework assignment that we're tasked with. And we're given the opportunity to become aware of whatever the belief is that we've incorporated into this false identity. And it doesn't feel good. And that's the message. Hey, that's the one you need to work on. But we have a tendency to want to try to amend the world around us and the people around us rather than amending ourselves. And so stress is getting or hitting ourselves in the head with a 2x4 one time. Suffering is when we keep banging our head with the same 2x4 and don't learn. But when we don't learn the lesson, we don't do our homework in that homework assignment, we get to keep that in the form of emotional baggage. And if you remember a homework assignment, you remember from school a textbook is invariably heavy than a regular book. Every lesson, every homework assignment has a textbook. And if you don't do your homework, that doesn't mean that the homework isn't due. It just means you didn't do it. So you got to carry a textbook with you everywhere you go until such time as you do your homework. Once you do your homework, you can put the textbook down, never have to carry it again. But if you don't do your homework for 30 days, then you're carrying a lot of textbooks and it's heavy. It's very heavy. And so someone, for example, and this leads to mental illness, for example, depression, people that experience depression, regardless of the side effects that psychology has defined as characteristics of depression, the one common feature of everybody that experiences depression is they feel heavy. So you have to ask, what could feel heavy? Well, it's the emotional baggage that feels heavy. And so healing that emotional baggage is liberating your vital energy. We all have potentially the same amount of energy. And the more of that energy that is required to carry that emotional baggage, all those textbooks, that is energy that you need to run your body and your mind and everything else. But if that energy is diverted to carrying that huge stack of textbooks, then your capacity to function is greatly diminished. And so it's necessary to heal that. As you heal that, your awareness escalates. That energy is the fuel for the awareness, and that awareness that appears because of your healing allows you to become aware of those beliefs that you've incorporated into your false identity and to begin to let those go. And it is just a matter of letting them go. Once you discover what the problem is, you're not going to walk away from it and say, oh no, I'll just leave that there. I know it's causing me pain and suffering, but no, I'll just leave it there. No, you let it go. You change. What we're doing is in that process also is we are moving up the consciousness scale. We are moving closer to the creator because with that awareness comes the surrendering of our perception of free will. What allows us to have the experiences that we do in creation, especially in the range of consciousness that we currently share, is our degree of intoxication with free will. And free will is an intoxicant. It works just like whiskey. When someone gets drunk, it lowers their awareness. And they sober up and some of that awareness comes back. But all the foolishness that people do is because of a lack of awareness. But free will, unlike what most philosophers have debated for centuries, is not whether we have the choice to turn right or to turn left or go high or low or whatever. It is the perception of separation. It was the first distortion of creation that facilitated creation's beginning. And so the lower down the scale that you get, it's all a series of fractals above from the layer above us is intoxicated more significantly with free will. So because we perceive ourselves as autonomous beings, separate from everyone else as well as the creator, we are demonstrating our high degree of intoxication of free will. And that ultimately is what we are surrendering, but that will be what we are surrendering as we evolve through the scales of creation is perpetually surrendering more and more of that free will intoxication. A sixth density being is just significantly more clear of that intoxication or sober from that intoxication than we are. We are that six density. We are six densities simultaneously, but because we are functioning at the third density level, we've got a lot more free will to surrender.
Right, right. So now I want to circle back real quickly. You mentioned edifying children of a lesser God. And I was wondering, first off, if you can just delve a little bit into the topics and maybe give us an overview of that particular book, because it seems like your books, even though they're not written as a series, you start at one place and it's almost like you can progress. But I think the progression, if I understand it, is coming from the self-awareness that you gain. Not
Right.
that you have to start with book number 3 and then go to 1 and 4. It's you can start anywhere. And then that next book kind of opens you up to a higher octave. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that was intentional. The Enlightenment, plain and simple, begins with 4 very simple exercises that can help people, as well as information, basic information that can help people begin the process and begin dealing with aches and pains and things of that nature. Um, the the identity model actually was directed towards the mental health profession in helping them understand what it is that they're really working with, but it's in simple language. So no background in mental health treatment is necessary in order to benefit from that significantly. The edifying children of a lesser God is again a primer. It's not as detailed as the raw material, and it's more focused towards the general public that has had these questions for some time and not known where to go, and maybe still semi-locked up in religion, but not really locked up in religion. So it kind of helps them gain some perspective. My fourth book is due out on the bookshelves of your neighborhood bookstore on August 30th. And it's much more of a compendium book than any of the others. And it will require a course of study. I explain in some detail, significant detail, the archetypical mind, describe what the nature of the different densities above us are and below us too, but those are not as interesting as the ones that are ahead of us. And things of that nature. There's some reiteration of what I put into the identity model book, because I anticipate that many people won't have read the identity model before they read the Enigma of Consciousness. But it's much more advanced, and it's a book that people can stay with for a long time and continue to get more information out of it.
Okay. So now for people who are not really familiar with densities, can you share a little bit about those?
Sure. A density is simply a range of consciousness that is defined by the degree of free will intoxication. The densities 1 and 2 are foundational densities. They are the farthest away in their capacity to perceive the creator. First density is inorganic material, and what we would perceive to be inorganic material. Second density is organic, plants and animals. We are in third density, and third density is the first density that a mind, body, spirit is created that will be preserved through the balance of our evolution. In other words, it's a cumulative process. We create a consciousness pattern, which is our metaphysical self, and we project and part of ourselves into a physical environment. What we learn during that incarnation is absorbed, taken back into our consciousness pattern, and through a variety of incarnations and all sorts of possible male, female, rich, poor, black, white, whatever, gives us a more rounded perspective of the awareness and the things that we need to learn in this range of consciousness. Above the foundational densities, the third, fourth, and fifth densities are considered to be experiential densities. And consciousness has experiences in all densities, but the focus of experience is much more significant in 3, 4, and 5. And when the densities were being created in seventh densities, 5 inherent characteristics of the creator became evident. And those, the creator was aware of them before, but not as categories, I guess, but they weren't delineated. They became delineated in seventh density, and those very simply are awareness, love, wisdom, unity, and stillness. Third density, because of our capacity, deals with awareness. And that's why it is what we are tasked with becoming in order to prepare for graduation to the fourth density. Fourth density does the same thing with love. And again, love is a condition of being. It's not an emotion that we share or perceive or can actually get. Fifth density deals with wisdom. Sixth density is unity. Seventh density is stillness. Eighth density is the creator as the subject. And so there's no delineation in eighth density. And a density is, if you recall, possibly from high school chemistry, the concept of molarity, where that is essentially the density, the denseness of a solid or a series of solids or flakes or whatever within a colloidal solution. a liquid-like solution. And the higher the molarity, the more particles that there are that are in that volume of liquid. And it is essentially the same thing. The lower the molarity, the lower the consciousness, the lower the density. There's more space, so to say, which is ironic because it's just the inverted of that in practice, but there's less creatorness in that volume, the lower the density goes.
Beautiful. Okay. I want to ask another question. So
Okay.
we talked a little bit, excuse me, we talked a little bit earlier about your podcast, Chatting with the Arcturians, but you have another podcast, Simple Enlightenment. Can you tell us a little bit about that podcast, what type of guests you have, what some of your themes are, and if you have had some really great information to come through lately?
Well, the Simple Enlightenment is, I don't have any guess. It's me pontificating on all of these topics, and it is like a course of study that you can begin at the beginning and follow through. It explains the densities, it explains galaxies, universes, all of that, the archetypical mind. And so it is not something I'm adding to. It's kind of that course of study.
Okay.
Chatting with the Arcturians, the only guests that we have are the Arcturians. And we just, they say, okay, we're ready to talk, and okay, we have time, so we record what they have to say.
Now, do you
And
have the same group that comes through time and time, or do you have other guest Arcturians that pop in periodically?
well, the Arcturians is a 9-star system.
Mm-hmm.
We are part of a 9-star system, which is simply a sister 9-star system. And I talked about the 5 inherent characteristics of the creator. Each of these are archetypes. In addition to that, free will is an archetype. It is the first distortion. So in addition to that, there are, what would it be, 26 distortions of the inherent characteristics that are also archetypes. And every universe is created based upon a mixing and matching of these archetypes. Our universe is a 9-star system universe, which means that every star is home to an archetype of the creator, and they are expanded in groups of 9. And so we, in other universes, have a different mixture. Some archetypes, some universes have all 32 as the basis of their expansion of the universe. Some have less, some have more. So the purpose is to fulfill the purpose of creation. Purpose of creation, very simply, is so that the one infinite creator might know itself by experiencing itself. And so these are all different mechanisms that the creator can explore itself and its distortions through the experiences of creation. And so the Arcturians are simply a sister 9-star system. They've been in the process longer than we have. And so they have some maturity that our 9-star system doesn't have. Not that our 9-star system is deficient. They've just been in the system longer than our 9-star system. And when the Arcturians speak to us, they speak to us as one voice, which is for the 9-star system. And it's not a character. There's not a character that shows up. They speak. We are the Arcturians.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no, hey, you take it this way, and you explain it to them this week and that way. It's one voice that is consistent. It is essentially a 6th density, 7th density. My understanding is not so involved with communicating with we people down here, but it's essentially a 6th density level communication, but it's not isolated into one of the inherent characteristics. Ra is one of the inherent characteristics. It is Ra is the inherent characteristic for love, and they are deeply involved. Our sun is home to law, which is wisdom. And Earth essentially is a joint effort by Ra and Law in order to hopefully guide us into further future development.
Mhm.
But when we speak to the Arcturians, it's not delineated at all like that.
Okay. I know a lot of times people who channel the Arcturians will have, say, like a council of nine, and one representing whether it's each of the planets or a sector or whatever it is. And then occasionally there will be not really one voice that comes through because it's always as one voice, but it's almost like a different personality. You know, they have these different, maybe archetypes even within these collectives that will
Mm-hmm.
come forward sometimes. So
Mm-hmm.
that's basically what I was referring to. So do you have a lot of the personalities that will come forward through these sessions that you have?
Now, the tenor of the communication for the last two that we've had is different because it was the voice of the Federation
Mhm.
rather than just the voice of the Arcturians, and it was much more serious. Usually, the Arcturians are more playful. You know, they have humor that they demonstrate, but the Federation didn't want to imply that there's anything even vaguely humorous about the information that they were delivering.
Mm.
But
Do you,
there's not we've not experienced a variety in personality. My higher self that I talk to is um, laughs at me all the time. So, I provide them with great humor.
yes, I think they laugh at us all quite often.
Well, I'm sure they do. Yeah.
I know my team does. Yeah. So one of the other things that I wanted to ask you about is, you know, there's a lot of people who will feel pressure in certain situations, and other people don't feel pressure in the exact same situation. And I'm sure that a lot of that has to do with their training, their thoughts growing up, etc., the different types of situations that they've been exposed to. But how prevalent do you think that our cultural factors are on creating stress? And I'm referring to the stress that you were referencing earlier in your conversation.
Well, it has a lot to do with it, but that can, relatively speaking, be overcome by someone who achieved higher consciousness within the density.
Mm-hmm.
The density is divided. If you think of the density as being a mile, then there are inches all along the way. And as we progress through the density, it's never a straight path. We establish a median level that is which is representative of our progression through the consciousness scale, but we oscillate above and below that line. So the lower we are, the lower our median is within the density, then the greater the oscillations are, the more peaks and valleys that we experience. And as we progress through the density, then those oscillation highs and lows become shorter and shorter until they won't stop in this range of consciousness, but they no longer provide us with that extreme one day, and then the next day we're 180 degrees from that. And one day we're riding high on the mountain, and the next day we're in the doldrums of the valley. So it depends on where the individual is in their consciousness scale, because what happens, awareness is required in order to advance along that consciousness scale. And as you become aware, you become more aware of the thoughts that you're processing. And so no experience comes to us with emotion on it. It is entirely our interpretation that applies the intensity of the experience. And so as we gain perspective and we become more awareness, then those intensities fall away because we have more stability, more presence of mind as to what we're doing, what our experiences are.
Now, you've referenced the consciousness scale several times. And for people who are watching that may not be familiar with that, can you explain a little bit more about what the consciousness scale is and discuss a couple of the octaves that are found in there?
Well, sure. All of the densities 1 through 7 are created according to a scale, and progression is at 2 leaps at a time. There are 64 platform levels within that scale, but you don't progress 1 at a time. You have to go 2 at a time. The first density is scaled between 2 and 8. Second density begins at 10 and goes through 16. Third density begins at 18 and goes through 24. Fourth density goes up four more platform levels, and it's 4 more for fifth density. Sixth density is the broadest range of consciousness. It is the most diverse, and there are 8 platform levels. And then seventh density is 4 more, that it eventually totals 64. But your progression is measured along these, and they correspond to what science has defined as our DNA. And for years, the scientists have determined that only 20 strands of DNA are activated, and all those other strands are junk DNA that must have been from our primitive past, not realizing that they are unactivated and we haven't gotten there yet. But we have, as a population, been distorted by some folks that, for the most part, kept us stuck within the lower ranges of the density, the 18 to 20. We really couldn't go past the 20 range, and that has contributed significantly to our population's inability to advance, as most third density experiences do. But that scale is, though, even those platform levels are divided into an infinite range of even smaller markings of how we make progress, and we can advance and we can go backwards. It is entirely up to us as to how much stability that we can maintain in the course of our progression through the densities.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right. So I want to go ahead and open up our conversation. If anyone in the audience has any questions, any comments, anything they would like to share, if you'll go ahead and raise your hand. Hi, Patty.
Hi. Dean, what I'm a bit interested to know is, when you talk about the freedom of will, are you referring to freedom of will in our human consciousness, or are you referring to the freedom of will from the soul's consciousness?
From the what consciousness?
From the consciousness of the soul.
From the soul.
We are, what we perceive to be our mind, body, spirit is an analog projection of our consciousness pattern. So the concept of distortion, the distortion of free will, is the one ingredient that began creation, made creation possible. So it is pervasive of every autonomous perceiving entity or organism in all of creation. The degree of it works like an intoxicant. So depending on how much of an autonomous being we perceive ourselves to be, is kind of an illustration of how intoxicated with free will that we are. And we're very intoxicated with free will. So it's both, to answer your question. The soul is synonymous with the consciousness pattern, but a soul is has religious connotations to it, and it really is a consciousness pattern. Don't have, bodies like we do here. We're non-gendered, and we are a concept. All of creation is a concept, but we are a self-contained concept that is perpetually evolving through creation.
Okay. Currently, I'm reading Michael Newton's second book. Michael Newton's The Regressive Hypnotherapist. And at the moment, that part of the book I'm in is dealing a lot with the freedom of will of the soul. And it's quite interesting what he has to say from his studies from the regressive hypnotherapy. And he's done about 2,600 of those in his life. And it's, to me, it's, well, as I am understanding it, the souls actually have they can be not punished, but they are held back from advancement if they get it wrong. It's extremely interesting.
It's never held back. There are never any restrictions other than having to fulfill the curriculum of the range of consciousness that you're currently participating in. But you can, there's no reason why you or I couldn't drop all of our free will intoxication and all of our distortions today and evolve back to the Creator immediately. However, that would be very, very difficult to do, because this perception of self that we have, that the free will intoxication creates, is who we think we are. And so if this is who I think I am, how am I going to drop that entirely and zip back to total unity with the Creator? And that is how creation works. We perceive ourselves to be an organism, and the next density, in fourth density, we will become love, but in that we will surrender the autonomy, most of the autonomy of our organism, and become part of a social memory complex. And that will be our larger organism that we function as. That gets even larger in fifth density. In sixth density, the density of unity. It takes a long time, but we will dissolve that even more as we prepare to move back to seventh density. Seventh density, we will become part of Ra or Law or Ka or whatever the inherent characteristic is. And even that in seventh density is a process of reunification of those concepts, those inherent characteristic concepts. And the instruction that I had about seventh density's uniqueness is in kind of like weaving a basket. And so every basket, every flow of consciousness back through seventh density is weaving a unique basket with the same strands of inherent characteristic. So that begins the density as an autonomously perceiving inherent characteristic, but by the time you get ready to graduate back to eighth density, all is one again. So we are simply dissolve our perceptions of separation. We are moving towards forming larger organisms, and that becomes an even larger organisms until eventually we dissolve all perception of separation and we are reunited with the Creator.
Okay.
Right.
Very interesting. Thanks
but
very
until
much.
then, sure. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Patty. Okay, Spirit.
Oh,
Are
good.
you up next, or is it Susie?
No, I think it's me, Sheila.
Hi.
I'd like to ask, my sense is, and coming from I heard a non-local voice to ask if we wanted to come from the eighth dimension where we were formless, but we were points of unique consciousness. There was no, we didn't have any problems. It was more like being in heaven or something, complete bliss and never bored. But we heard called to come to Earth. Didn't even know what Earth was or what a planet was. So I've been here in 73 human years, attempting to help people understand choiceless awareness, where we are undivided from everyone and everything, all that is, as an eternal now, essentially. Could you speak about that?
Okay. Speak about, I'm not sure what you want me to speak about. Why some people are here with with an awareness greater than the rest of the population,
No, it's
or
rather, I would like to have your sense of choiceless awareness. You've been talking about being bound by the delusion of being separate but in choiceless awareness, there's only the unity of all the entirety of creation as a timeless, eternal recreation of creation, from which no one is separate. So if you could speak to that, I'd love to hear what you had to say.
okay. Well, what the Buddha was an illustration of a wanderer, and there are many wanderers that still participate in the earth experience. Jesus was a wanderer. Lao Tzu was a wanderer. A wanderer is a sixth density being that projects an analog projection of itself into third density to participate. And in the course of participation, by virtue of their higher consciousness origination, their energy helps to lift the population. Oftentimes, the wanderer has a specific purpose, like the Buddha. So they have some anticipated abilities that the normal one does not have. Same with Lao Tzu, same with Jesus. Jesus actually was a fourth density wanderer. The problem that Earth has had is within a quote unquote normal, the plan that conscious individuals will progress within the density of their own volition, so that you'll have a range of consciousness levels that have organically emerged from within the density and within the specific experience. And the lower consciousness beings observe the greater happiness of those that have achieved higher consciousness, and they begin to emulate them, and by their own volition evolve through the density. For a variety of reasons, not been successful in that. And so they devised the plan of wanderers, the higher, usually sixth density consciousness beings that project that analog projection of themselves in the earth experience, and provide a stimulus for or an object of observation for the beings that are seeking to graduate. What the sixth density beings project into the third density experience is not seeking to graduate. They graduated a long time ago. But they provide models for those that have not been able to move through the system. And this is, we just finished in February of 2016, the fifth attempt of a large part of the Earth population to graduate from a third density experience, but have yet been able to do so. And so we're in a holdover period right now for those third density beings that are still participating in the experience. And that's part of what the Arcturians were providing us information with, is the the window was closing, and the opportunity to graduate through this most recent third density experience is coming to a close, but there's always another experience. You can stay in third density just as long as you want to, until you graduate, until you learn the curriculum and move on to the fourth density. But you know, there are varying degrees of awareness. Someone who is intuitive, that has the capacity to channel, that has other perceived spiritual gifts, simply has a thinner veil than the rest of the population. A veil essentially is just like you would anticipate. It is a veil that keeps us separated from our communication with our consciousness pattern, as well as our higher self. And it's not intentional that it separate that, but it was a necessary protective device because the Earth population was so inundated with erroneous influences. So it had a double-edged sword. It made us think that we were more isolated than we really were, but it also protected us from intrusions from not so nice sources. So, you know, I don't know your particular circumstances. That's something that I'm sure your higher self could inform you of. But you know, there are all sorts of ingredients that could be falling into that decision on your part, or that awareness on your part of what your effort has been. Does that help?
You spoke of the creator or the totality as being choiceless, or as creation as being orchestrated by that which is seemed to be the intimation. There was an indivisibility, a choiceless awakeness, that where we are aware of being this awakeness that is timeless and eternal, that unites all of creation. So I was hoping you could
Well,
speak
all
to,
is one.
yeah.
Well,
So I was
all is
hoping that you
one.
would speak to your sense of that.
Okay, well, as I say, all is one. We function, we perceive ourselves to be autonomous beings only because of our elementary degrees of advancement within the consciousness scale. You know, my perceptions of autonomy have greatly been reduced as I've been going through this process. In meditation, I experience a tremendous degree of unity, but then I have to come back into the village. And when I come back into the village, then I share many of the same perceptions of separation and autonomy that the bulk of the population does.
Great. Thank you very
Your sense of
much.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, Dean, I want to ask you, with everything that we've been talking about, we've talked about a lot of different topics. Is there anything that you wish to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Well, just very simply, if you've not come to that point of awakening where you're unsatisfied with what you're doing, then assume responsibility for yourself and begin the work as quickly as possible. It's extremely gratifying. It is the only means of providing the happiness, a greater happiness that we all seek. That is our measure of how we're doing. The happier we get, the more productive we're being in moving through the system. Bliss is nothing more than the absence of stress, and stress is motivated or created only because we are maintenance of this false perception of self. So the more we can surrender that, the more we can heal the emotional baggage, the more benefit that we can be to those surrounding us that are also in the process, whether they're aware of it or not, as well as propel yourself towards the desired goals.
Beautiful. Thank you. And if people want to contact you, how can they do so?
Well, I have a website, the initial D, deangraves.org. And I have my contact information on there. The books are referenced on there, and the services that I can provide to people is on there. And it's kind of a central collection point.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us. And as we wrap up, Susie has a song for us to send
Okay.
us off into the evening or the morning, whichever it is.
Love is your decision. It's up to us to give of our hearts. Love is our decision. No one else can tell us to start. And once I decide to change my mind, the source always shows me how. 'Cause love, it is our decision right here and now. And love, it is our decision. It's up to us to stand on that bridge. And love, it is our decision. No one else can help us forgive. And once we decide to change minds, the source always shows us how. 'Cause love, it is our decision right here and now.
Thank you. Very beautiful. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you. Big hug.
All right. Let's see, Susie, if I could get you to go on mute. There we go. We always seem to get that echo. All right. Well, everyone, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Dean, I want to thank you for coming out. Again, I want to remind people that you have two different podcasts, Simple Enlightenment and Chatting with the Arcturians. And where can people find those podcasts?
On any major podcast source. We primarily work with Spotify, but they're on Apple and all the major podcasts.
Okay, beautiful. Well, again, I want to thank you so much for being with us. I want to thank everyone in our audience. Ashley, thanks so much for texting back and forth with me on Zoom. And I just want to wish everyone a beautiful evening. You've been listening and watching Dean Graves on Cosmic Conversations on the Conscious Awakening Network. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. I send you many blessings and much love, and namaste. Have a good evening, a good morning, a good afternoon.
Wherever
Bye-bye.
you are.
That's right, wherever you are. Bye-bye.